The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 teachers in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with the Tennessee academic standards. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu. This video is aligned with the following Tennessee academic standards.
As I mentioned this morning, my name is Kira Duke. I'm the education specialist with the program and work with teachers across the state to share primary sources, share educational resources, and to talk about how you can use the Library of Congress in your classroom. I always like to start with thinking about, some of the first things that come to mind when you hear about the Library of Congress. So what are some of the first things that come to mind for you if someone mentions the library?
My favorite place to visit in DC.
All right, yeah, a great place to visit. It is.
It's my favorite website.
Really? All right, yeah. Is that a wonderful website? Rich with resources?
I get a poem a day from the Poet Laureate.
Oh, okay. Very cool, yeah. Yeah, the Poet Laureate, they send out, you can sign up for all kinds of different mailing lists through the Library of Congress. You can easily fill your inbox. So the Library of Congress is the nation's oldest federal cultural institution. The foundational pieces of the library's collections actually come from Thomas Jefferson's private libraries. And after the British burned DC, of course, the original library holdings were destroyed. And and Jefferson felt very strongly about restarting that collection. So actually worked out a deal with Congress to sell portions of his own library. And if you visit DC and you get to go to the Jefferson building, they actually have a permanent exhibit there called Jefferson's Library that you can see, which is really cool. They also have a online exhibit called Jefferson's Library that you can view online, so you can actually look at that with your students. The library is, of course, the research arm of Congress. This is where our Congress people send their staffers to do research as they are working on legislation and the other work that they are charged with. And it is home to millions of maps, photographs, recordings, books, etc. The Library of Congress is the world's largest library. And as so, it really is staggering to think about how much stuff they have. If you visit in DC, you know that there are 3 actual buildings to make up the Library of Congress. In DC, the Jefferson Building, the Adams Building, and the Madison Building, only 2 of which are open to the public. But then, of course, they have other facilities because all their stuff won't even fit in those 3 buildings. So it really is amazing how much material the library has in its holdings. So Teaching with Primary Sources is the educational outreach program for the library, and it has evolved over the years. If we think about just 20 years ago, digital collections were a very new thing at that point. And so as they came into fruition, and as the Library of Congress started digitizing some of its materials, they started these education programs to have conversation with educators about how to use those materials in the classroom, and to also spread the word that you don't have to physically visit DC to make use of these materials. And so Teaching with Primary Sources has evolved out of kind of a multiple different programs they've done for education outreach over the years. So what we hope to do with Teaching with Primary Sources is, one, to have a conversation with educators about the types of materials that are available through the library's collections, but then also to think about how we use primary sources. We have so many that are now available to us through the internet. What do we do with them? How do we make use of them in the classroom? How do we get students to engage with those sources in a way that is going to be productive for their learning and productive for classroom use? And so that's kind of what we hope to accomplish with our program. The other thing we want to do, of course, is to talk about how to use the Library of Congress website. If you're new to the website, it can be a little overwhelming, just the sheer number of resources that are available through the site. The way it's layered, it is just staggering how much is there at the click of your mouse. So a lot of what we do is think about kind of ways to make it more time efficient for you. We understand that teachers don't have hours upon hours to dig through digital collections to find that one perfect primary source to use in their classroom the next day. So what we hope to do is, one, to give you tools to do it on your own, to do it in a time efficient way, but then also to go through and pick out things that we know will work with the curriculum. And so can give you kind of a curated collection of items that will fit within the curriculum standards. Now, in Tennessee, the program is housed at Middle Tennessee State University within the Center for Historic Preservation. The center is one of two centers of excellence at MTSU, the other being the Center for Popular Music. And within the Center for Historic Preservation, we actually do a few different programs. So we do this as our education piece. We also work with the National Park Service on the Tennessee Civil War National Heritage Area. So if you guys have seen those Civil War trail markers around, that's a project that we have worked with through the Heritage area. We also work with different historic sites and landowners who have properties that relate to the Civil War to help them think about preservation, interpretation, and how they can help to tell those stories to a larger audience. We have also, of course, been working with a lot of the different events that have taken place around the state over the last several years as we've commemorated the Civil War, and of course are now looking at continuing that on and talking about the Reconstruction story. So that's another program the center does. We also work with the State Department of Agriculture on the Tennessee Century Farms program, so documenting farms that have been in the same family and are still operational after 100 years. And we do that, and there are farms across the state that meet those guidelines. We also work with different communities around the Southeast region to tell their histories, whether that be local stories or national stories, thinking about everything from doing driving tours to interpretive planning for museums to preservation planning, historic site reports. We do a lot of different things in a lot of different communities, and so you're liable to see us just about anywhere. Now, with our TPS program, our program is a little different than a lot of the others in the country, and there are currently about 24 different TPS programs in the United States. Now, one, we are very fortunate to have the program because not every state gets one. But what we have been able to do with ours is also to reach out to educators across the state. So instead of working with just a single school system or just a small region, we do try to service all of the teachers in the state of Tennessee and even some of those surrounding states as well. And we do this through a number of different things, but we don't spend our money on marketing. So if you find things that you think will be interesting or useful for yourself or for your colleagues, we ask that you just go back into your schools and share that information. Let them know about the free resources that are out there and that they can make use of these materials. Now, we do two functions to try to work with educators. One is to create materials, and we're going to spend some time looking at the website that we maintain where we put all of these different resources. And so those are things that are created either by our staff members or by graduate students who work with us. We also work one-on-one with teachers to develop materials, and you'll see examples of those as well. The other thing that we do is professional development. So whether it be workshops like this where we're partnering with an organization like Tennessee History Day, we also work a lot with the East Tennessee Historical Society in Knoxville. We work individually with school districts to come in and do different in-services and those kind of things. We also offer independent workshops that we do completely on our own. Some of those are strategy focused, so we're thinking about, how do we use primary sources, maybe specifically how do we use text sources, how do we connect with English language arts through primary sources. Sometimes they are content driven, so for example, we'll be doing a workshop here in September on immigration. We'll be doing that in Murfreesboro, thinking about immigration in the early 20th century. We do a multi-day institute every year in the summer, and for years we did that on Civil War topics, and we're kind of moving the timeline a little further now, and so this last year we did the Jim Crow era. We did that in Brownsville, and what we do with those, they're 3 days. We spend a day in the classroom, bring in a guest speaker to kind of give us historical background. We dig into the primary source material and look at what's available. And then we spend a day going out actually into the local community and looking at sites there that relate to whatever our theme is for the year. So for Jim Crow this year, we actually went and visited 4 different historic African American schools in rural West Tennessee. to think about how those schools developed and their role in the community during that period of Jim Crow. And then our final day, we spend actually thinking about how we make use of all of this in the classroom. So every year we do a different theme, but it's always kind of modeled along those lines. We typically do that in June. For all of our workshops, there's never a charge. This is all paid for through the Library of Congress, so we don't charge you. Now, if you are interested in possibly having us come out to do something with your school system, again, there is no charge for that. We will work with your school system, we will work with your school, so no charge to the district, the school, or to you as the educator. And if you're interested in that, just come talk to me during one of the breaks and I'll be happy to give you more information about that. Now, I also mentioned that we work one-on-one with teachers to develop materials. And if that is something you're interested in, I'm happy to talk with you about that. And we actually do that, we can do that online where you're developing things, we're giving you feedback, and then we actually invite those educators to come and present the lesson plans that they've created in some of our workshops. And so that's a really good way to get to build a lesson plan that will look good when you do your evaluations. And I know we've had several of the teachers who have done lesson plans with us use those for their evaluations and have gotten excellent feedback from their administrators on that. And again, that's something that I'm happy to talk with you about, and we have funding to support that program. So why don't we spend some time actually looking at the website that we have, and so you can see the types of resources that are there that are available to you as educators. www.mtsu.edu/TPS. Again, everything that is here is stuff that we have created, and we've done so with Tennessee State curriculum standards in mind. So as those standards change and are updated, we do go back through our lesson plans and try to update those so that they will align with the new standards. So for social studies, for example, of course, they're revising those again. Once those are finalized, we will start the work to do that. It does take us a little time to do that. There's, we have a limited staff, but we will be looking to update those once those standards are finalized. So typically, I think last time we did it, it took us about 6 months, but we'll have them updated well before they actually go into effect. So has everyone found the site? All right, so as you look at it, you will note at the top we have now a Google custom search box here. So you can actually search the site by keyword, by standard number, anything like that. And so this really does make the site a much more efficient tool to use. We've been doing the program since 2008. And so as you look at the site, you'll see that we've created a lot of materials. This is a really time-efficient way to explore it. So for example, if we were looking for materials to teach Andrew Jackson, thinking about our documentary we saw earlier, you'll note that we have 38 different items that pop up for Andrew Jackson. And so you can scan through that and you'll be able to see the primary source sets, the lesson plans, and all of those types of materials that have things pertaining to him. Now, to give you an idea of what you will find as you are doing that search, we're going to go through and look at the different sections and kind of talk about the different resources that are here within the site. You will note on the home page that at the bottom left there is a What's New section, and that's where you will find the most recent edition of our newsletter, our upcoming workshop schedule, and then of course the newest primary source sets, lesson plans, worksheets, different things like that will be added to this list. So let's look at our lesson plans section. You will note that they are divided by grade level. We do have materials for K through 12, although the bulk of our material really falls more into the middle school, high school range. But we do have things for the earlier elementary grades as well. For middle school and high school, we also have them divided by subject area. So if you look at those, you could click on the different subjects and it'll take you to that heading to show you what we have for those. You'll also note as you look at these that we oftentimes in a lesson plan will hit on curriculum standards for more than one subject area. So if we're doing something for history, oftentimes we're also going to be hitting standards for English as well. And so we really do make a concerted effort to be cross-curricular in the lesson plans and activities that we develop. All right, so let's look at one example here, and we'll look at the Devil Baby. Here's the one I'll open. They're all kind of formatted the same, so it doesn't matter which one you open to look at. All of our materials are PDF files, and we do this so that if you find something that you think will be useful for you, you can actually just save a copy to your computer, and you don't have to worry about coming to find that item again on the website. You just have a copy that's there for your use. Now, as you look at these, they are best viewed online. You can print them out, but we hyperlink a lot of different things in them, so they really do work best if you're viewing them from a computer. So as you're looking at one of our PDFs, especially for the lesson plans, you will see that we will have primary source images within those. Now, what you can do with these is you can actually click on those images, and it'll take you to where you see that in a larger format, where you could actually print that, or you could put it in a PowerPoint, whatever you want to do with it. You can also click on the title for those things, and that will take you to the bibliographic page for that item from the Library of Congress. So again, you can see where we got that source. Now, our lesson plans are formatted so that you'll see kind of the basic information here at the top, the grade, the subject, the time required. You'll get an overview to kind of tell you what the lesson plan is about. You'll see understanding goals and objectives. You'll find the investigative questions. So of course, this is what students should be able to address by the conclusion of the lesson. You'll note we will list out your curriculum standards. Then you'll find a list of the different primary sources and materials that are used. And so you'll see all of those are hyperlinked in here. There's also a PowerPoint that goes with this lesson plan. And so you'll see that we've also listed out the sources that are embedded in that PowerPoint as well. There's also a couple different worksheets that are included here, and you see links to those. The procedure step, of course, will break down the lesson plan. Most of our lesson plans are going to be 1 to 3 days. We don't do anything that's over 3 days because, well, we realize you guys don't have 3, 4, 5 days to teach one thing when you have 100 standards. And oftentimes, even when we do a multi-day lesson plan, we try to devise those in such a way that if you could only pick out, you could only have 1 day, you could just pick out one single day out of that lesson plan, and it would still work for you instead of having to do the entirety of it. So as you look through these, you'll also note that at the end, we will have a short section to kind of think about how you might evaluate your students if you did this lesson plan. There will be extension ideas, so if you wanted to kind of build off what we were doing here. And then when you look at the worksheets and those kind of things, those are also, of course, going to be PDF files. And so you'll see here we actually use a newspaper article, and so we've got that newspaper embedded in this worksheet with the questions that go with it. And of course you could download that PowerPoint there that goes with this lesson plan as well. So as you look through the lesson plans that are available, you'll note that we have quite a few, but by no means do we have lesson plans for every topic that's in your curriculum. But we are continuing to add to this. You'll see the ones that we have created. You'll note when we have lesson plans up here that were written by other teachers. So for example, we have this one about the rebuilding of Memphis after yellow fever. That was written by Mark Scott, who teaches at Bellevue Middle School in Shelby County. So as you go through and look at this list, you'll kind of see what we have. If you have suggestions for things that you would like to see, we do work off suggestions, and we will put those kind of towards the top of our list. We do mostly have U.S. history related things. There are, for 6th and 7th grade, there are a few items for world history. So if you go back to that middle school range and you scroll down through here, you see there's one on illuminated manuscripts, touring ancient sites, Write Like a Sumerian. So there are a few. Again, we do way more so towards the U.S. history side of things. And partially that's because the library's collections are much richer for U.S. history than they are for world history. But I'm going to show you a few other things that we have for world history that can be helpful. All right, So that's our lesson plans. So if you guys want to go back to the home page, now let's look at tools for educators. So that is the tab there at the top right column. Now this section has a couple different things on it. One, towards the top, you'll see kind of some basic guides for using the library's website. And I will say a few of these are a little outdated. The library has updated their site quite a bit recently, and so we need to do some modifications on some of these. But there is that section there. The first section on here that I think will really be useful for you all, though, is our themed guides. And these are kind of extended bibliographies to show you what is available from the library dealing with specific kind of topics. We typically put these together in relation to some of our content-based workshops. So for example, if we were thinking about founding documents, you'll see this one is actually a primary source set and links guide together. Actually, wait, let me not do that one because that one is kind of different. Let me come down and I'll do World War I. All right, so this one, this is our most recently updated links guide, and this one starts with looking at the digital collections that are available that touch on World War I. And so what we do here is we'll list out the collection, and then we'll give you a little kind of sentence or two to tell you kind of what's in that collection. So this is really helpful if you have students who are doing projects that are touching on some of these topics. This gives them a good kind of starting point to think about what's out there and available. So you'll see those listing of collections, and then as you go forward, you will see listings of exhibits. So these are all the different online exhibits the library has that touch on World War I, timelines, different blog articles, and this isn't the totality of what they have for blogs, articles related to World War I. These are just kind of the best blog articles. This is something that the library has been doing more frequently, is developing these. And they have them for different topics. I'll show you later on where they're at, but they can be really a very, very helpful resource in thinking about kind of new highlighted primary sources as those blog articles. They'll have different presentations, and then of course we'll also see kind of today in history. We'll see the different teaching guides. And then we close out with some other websites that have really good World War I resources. And so these are things outside of the Library of Congress. So these themed guides really can give you a good sense of what's available for these different topics, including, again, the teaching resources. You will also note for your colleagues that maybe teach elementary, or even for those of you who are teaching the U.S. history, we have these resource guides for grade levels. And these were done by a librarian up in Blount County who works with us quite frequently. She put these together for us. And what she did was went through the social studies standards, and you'll see she'll have listed out a standard, and then she links like a few things that could be used to teach that standard. Now, where this is useful for those of you who might be teaching 8th grade and high school U.S. history is that a lot of times there's a lot of overlap between those standards as far as the content. They're, of course, written differently, but the content's pretty similar. And so these could actually also point you in the direction of some good sources to use too. And for those of you teaching world history, we do have this links guide that shows you the different databases and collections that pertain to different aspects of world history. The most useful digital collection for world history is this database called the World Digital Library. And that is a partnership project that the Library of Congress is involved in with other libraries and archives around the world. And so you can actually access, you can see they have over 16,000 items from 193 countries, dating as far back as 8,000 BCE. So yeah, so it's really cool. The other thing that I really like about this site, let's see, and I'll just click one here, is that with any item, they also have this kind of little short paragraph description that gives you some context for it, which is really nice. And gives you kind of related similar items. It gives you a map to give you kind of a geographic reference from where this came from. And you have a listen to this page so that you can actually, it will read the page for you. And so this is, of course, great for if you have students who are struggling readers or maybe English language learners. And then, of course, for those really difficult words that you're not sure exactly how to pronounce, this can give you some idea. So yeah, it's a pretty helpful resource. So that's the World Digital Library, and you can get straight to that. Actually, it's wdl.org is the web address for that site, wdl.org. Now, below the theme guide section on the website, we have a section called Ready to Print Analysis Worksheets and Graphic Organizers. And we're going to spend some time this afternoon actually going through and using some of these. And so you'll see a section here with the teacher guides that you can use, the student worksheets. Then we have some different activities for primary sources. So these are some things that we've done in different workshops that teachers have asked us to share. And at the very bottom, different graphic organizers. So, and with these, you see that they are, kind of blank, so you could definitely adapt these to use with just about any selection of sources. So that is our tools section. All right, if you guys want to go back to our home page, we'll look at primary source sets next. So what these are basically curated collections of sources. So we went through and tried to pick out the best items that the library has that we think that could be useful in a classroom. So as you look through this list, you'll see again we have quite a few. We are continuing to add to this, and in fact the next one we have that will go up will be about the Vietnam War. Yeah, Trail of Tears is the one we just put up. And so with any of these, you'll see there'll be a historical background section that kind of give you an overview, some suggestions for how you might use this, and then you'll see the sources. And so, this one here, the first page looks at different maps. We have some additional links for other resources. And we worked with our colleague, Amy Costine, who works with the Trail of Tears project that the center's been doing with the National Park Service. And so she shared with us a lot of the different collections that she uses beyond just the Library of Congress. And so we've tried to include those too. Again, if you're thinking about doing a research project on Trail of Tears, there's a lot of good material in here and good references that can lead you to good stuff. And you'll notice we go through that we really try to be very particular in showing a good range of different types of primary sources. And so you'll see illustrations, you'll see text, you'll see maps. We want to make sure that we're not just giving you one type of source. We want to encourage students, of course, to learn to be adaptable, to look at different types of sources, and so we want to be sure that we're representing that as well. And then at the end of the primary sources, you'll see citations. So we'll have a Chicago is the style we use, and so you'll see the citation for each of the primary sources included in the primary source set. You'll also note on this list that we have a few that we'll note from them grade level and subject. What we did here for middle school and high school was when they did the standards for social studies the last time, and they referenced all of those primary sources within the standards, we tried to go through and find as many of those as we could through the Library of Congress and then put them all in one resource for you. So for example, what you'll see is we took the unit headings from your standards, so for example, Civil War, and then students are supposed to be required to read, Lincoln's second inaugural address, the Emancipation Proclamation, the Gettysburg Address, and then Sam Watkins' Company 8. So we've listed, we've got links to all of those materials here, and then we include some other sources that could also be used within those units. Now, the library doesn't have every source that's required reading within your standards, but it does have quite a few of them. And so we tried to put those all in one resource that could easily be used and looked at. Now, some time periods the library has better resources than others. And so you'll note that as you go through, sometimes there are certain topics that there's just more information, more resources than you could ever possibly use in a class. and then for others it's a little thinner. So you know, that's kind of, you'll note that as you go through and you compare this with your standards, where those differences are at. And then of course, as we get into you know, more recent history, the library also has issues with kind of copyright. So there's a lot of material that you can't access via their website, or the fact that things are kind of spread amongst a lot of different, you know, institutions now. So you know, you'll have more materials at the National Archives, you'll have more at presidential libraries and other places. And so you still find things in the more recent history, but it's not as plentiful as, say, Civil War, World War I, or women's suffrage. So, and then you will note also that we have, there is also for the 6th and 7th grade and the high school world history, we have guides for those too. Then I'm going to go to our newsletters tab. Now we try to make our newsletter a useful tool to have an ongoing conversation with teachers. And so every month we look at a different theme, and we'll actually highlight sources and develop lesson ideas that can be used as kind of a jumping off point for you. So you'll see here our most recent one was on historical memory. And this is kind of one of the more kind of abstract themes that we have done. All of our newsletters are 4 pages in length. The first page will give you news items, upcoming events, a little blurb about what our theme is about for the month. And then we will feature an awesome source and kind of give you a little, some questions or some context for it. And then on our second page, we'll have typically 2 lesson ideas. Now, since we did historical memory this last month, and that is a little more abstract, we thought we should probably spend a little more time talking about what are we talking about when we say historical memory? What does that mean? And so we've provided some examples in here. And things that are really kind of been in the recent public conversation. So if you guys have been following the news, then you've probably heard talk of the discovery at Monticello about the Sally Hemings living quarters. And so what we want to talk about is, okay, so how does having this new discovery change how they're going to present the story of Thomas Jefferson and the people who lived at Monticello? How is that interpreted? And so that kind of gets into that aspect of memory. We also, of course, then reference, we were involved in the events commemorating the Memphis Massacre, and so thinking about, you know, how we commemorate events and what words we use to describe them, and how this can also change our understanding of different points in time. So, so you'll see again that there are lots of things that are hyperlinked here to get you to more resources. You'll also note that there's an important links section. So again, we're going to link you to resources such as lesson plans, blog articles, collections, you know, lots of different things that you could, again, think about how you could expand that to teach on the theme. And then our lesson ideas, of course, are going to give you more kind of concrete examples. So we have a lesson idea here on road names. And so thinking about, you know, how we change road names and name them after people or places, you know, how that can be used to talk about memory. And this actually, at the very end, you'll see, we'll note how this ties into the curriculum. And so this can be adapted to actually meet first grade social studies standards, and you'll see that we actually listed out the particular standard. We also have lesson ideas this past month on the Vietnam War and looking at the memorial and the development of the Vietnam War Memorial. And then thinking about kind of pop culture references on historical memory. We talk about Gone with the Wind and comparing the relationships depicted in that film versus relationships depicted within primary sources. And we actually use some excerpts from the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass to do those comparisons. And then on the final page, we will feature 4 additional primary sources and give you kind of some blurb, a little blurb with some questions and some context for those that you could use with students. So as you look at this list, this is where all of our past newsletters are archived. And like I said, we've been doing these. We started the program in 2008. We started the newsletters in 2009. So we've been doing them for 8 years. So that's lots of different topics that we've covered. Now, I will say, while we try to keep most of the site updated as the library's site changes and they change links, we don't go back and update links on past newsletters, largely because we just don't have the staffing to do that. So if you're looking at an older edition and you run across a link that's broken, that's where you can feel free to reach out and contact me or my colleague Stacy Graham, who does this program, and we'll be happy to help you track down what that new link should be. So again, keep that in mind as you're looking at these. When you look, you'll note that we cover a large variety of themes. So it's never the same thing twice as far as what we're doing. So we do everything from kind of media literacy and using text-based sources to civics education. There have been some, we did a math issue a few years ago. We've done art, children's literature. Really, we do a lot of different themes within the newsletter. If you're not currently on our list, and I've got your contact sheet now, I will get you added to that, so you'll start to get these every month. We send them out the first of each month. Our next newsletter, our topic is communism in the early 20th century, or in the 20th century. All right, and the final thing on our side I want to show you guys is our Civil War resources section. We put this page together because during the Civil War commemoration, the sesquicentennial commemoration, we were doing a lot of workshops, we created a lot of materials for Civil War, and so we thought we would just kind of put that all in one section so easily could be found. I want to draw your attention to the content resources here. These are short essays that were written by one of our colleagues who's a Civil War historian. And she did these for us typically in relation to one of our summer institutes. And so she looked at these different themes and thought about them in relation to what was happening in Tennessee with these. So for example, with home front, we talk a lot about what was happening on the home front in Tennessee. We think about emancipation, what was happening with emancipation in Tennessee. And so these are really great resources, again, to give you as a teacher a little more context into some of these themes within Civil War history. But if you have students who are in high school who are doing research projects, or you have students in middle school that are advanced readers that are doing research projects, these are also really good readings for them as well. And at the end of each one of them, you will find a resources section, so kind of a little bibliography to give you suggestions for other readings that are going to be particularly helpful for that particular theme. So that's kind of a quick look at what we have on our site. Questions?
Now the essays you just mentioned, I got lost there.
Now those are
At the bottom?
there. If you click on Civil War resources,
Yes.
and then if you look there into that, their content resources.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I will say, if you like those supplemental readings, one of our recent additions to the lesson plans also includes one that looks at Pan-Africanism and Marcus Garvey. And that is this Back to Africa movement lesson plan. There's a supplemental essay that goes with it too. So if that's within your curriculum.